The first gunshot echoed through Westfield Mall at 3:42 p.m. on Black Friday. Thousands of shoppers hit the floor as chaos erupted across 3 levels of stores and restaurants. Security guard Carlos Rivera was supposed to radio for help and wait for police. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone who saw the security footage. He moved toward the gunfire with the tactical precision of someone who had been in firefights before, many times, in places where backup was miles away and survival meant neutralizing the threat yourself. When ordinary people face extraordinary danger, heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear security shirts and carry walkie-talkies. Before we dive into this intense story of courage, tactical expertise, and the warrior who never truly left the battlefield, tell me in the comments which city you are watching from today. And if you believe stories like Carlos's prove that protectors come in many forms, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who stand between evil and innocence. Carlos Rivera had been working mall security at Westfield Shopping Center for exactly 2 years, 8 months, and 4 days. To the thousands of shoppers who passed him daily, he was just another security guard, polite, professional, but unremarkable. Someone who checked receipts at electronics stores, helped lost children find their parents, and occasionally dealt with shoplifters who thought they could outrun a middle-aged man in a uniform shirt. What the shoppers didn't see was how Carlos positioned himself to maintain sight lines across multiple levels of the mall, how his eyes automatically tracked potential threats, or how he unconsciously calculated tactical advantages and escape routes during his daily patrols. Habits formed during 8 years as a Marine Force Recon operator died hard, especially when those habits had kept him alive in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Carlos had enlisted in the Marines straight out of high school, drawn by the challenge and the chance to serve something bigger than himself. After completing basic training in infantry school, he had volunteered for Force Reconnaissance Training, the Marine Corps Elite Special Operations Unit that conducted deep reconnaissance, direct action, and special operations missions behind enemy lines. Force Recon training had been brutal. Only a small percentage of Marines who attempted the program actually graduated, and those who did became part of an elite brotherhood that operated where conventional forces couldn't go. Carlos had excelled in close quarters combat, urban warfare, and tactical leadership under fire. For 8 years, he had deployed to places that didn't officially exist, conducting missions that were never acknowledged, fighting in conflicts that had no names. The transition to civilian life had been challenging. Carlos's skills didn't translate obviously to most careers, and the hypervigilance that had kept him alive in combat zones made normal social interactions difficult. After trying several jobs that didn't provide the sense of purpose he needed, Carlos had found peace in security work. Protecting people felt like a continuation of his military service, even if the threats were shoplifters instead of insurgents. For nearly 3 years, the system had worked. Carlos found satisfaction in maintaining order, helping lost tourists navigate the mall, and ensuring that families could shop safely. His military past was buried so deep that even his supervisor knew only that he had served overseas before transitioning to civilian employment. Westfield Mall was one of the largest shopping centers in the metropolitan area, with over 200 stores spread across 3 levels and anchored by major department stores. On Black Friday, the mall typically hosted over 15,000 shoppers, families taking advantage of holiday sales, teenagers hanging out with friends, elderly couples enjoying their daily walks through climate-controlled corridors. Carlos was patrolling the second-level food court when he heard the first gunshot. Not a car backfiring, not construction noise, not the sound of something heavy falling in a store. A gunshot, unmistakably, undeniably, A high-velocity round fired from a military-style weapon in an enclosed space. His Marine training kicked in before his conscious mind had time to process what was happening. Carlos dropped into a tactical crouch, identified the direction of the gunfire, and began moving toward the threat while other people were still trying to figure out what they had heard. The second burst of gunfire came from the main concourse near the north entrance, followed immediately by screaming and the sound of hundreds of people running in panic. Carlos could hear multiple weapons firing, which meant multiple attackers, which meant a coordinated assault on a soft target filled with defenseless civilians. Carlos's security radio crackled with confused chatter from other guards, but he was already moving with purpose toward the gunfire. His supervisor's voice came through the radio. "All units, we have reports of gunfire in the mall. Evacuate your areas and wait for police response." But Carlos wasn't thinking like a security guard in a mall. He was thinking like a Force Recon Marine who had been trained to close with and destroy the enemy, especially when civilians needed protection. The rules of engagement had changed, but the mission remained the same: neutralize the threat. As Carlos approached the main concourse, he could see the tactical situation developing. 3 armed men in dark clothing were moving through the mall in a coordinated pattern, firing systematically at storefronts and into crowds of fleeing shoppers. They carried semi-automatic rifles and moved with enough discipline to suggest military or paramilitary training. Carlos assessed the situation with eyes trained by 8 years of combat experience. The attackers were using bounding overwatch, one providing cover while the others advanced, which meant they had tactical training. They were targeting the main exits, trying to create a kill zone where fleeing civilians would be trapped in concentrated fire. From his position behind a decorative pillar, Carlos could see approximately 200 shoppers trapped in the central concourse, pinned down by gunfire and unable to reach the exits. Store employees were pulling security gates down and barricading themselves inside, following lockdown protocols that were designed for single shooters, not coordinated assaults. Carlos made a tactical decision that would have been familiar to any Marine who had served in urban combat zones. He couldn't wait for police backup that was still minutes away. He couldn't evacuate civilians who were trapped in the kill zone. His only option was to go on the offensive and neutralize the threat. Moving with skills honed by years of close quarters combat training, Carlos began stalking the attackers through the mall. He used store displays for concealment, maintenance corridors for tactical movement, and the acoustic properties of the mall to mask his approach. Carlos had no weapon except his radio and his training, but he had been taught to improvise weapons from any environment. The first attacker was positioned near the jewelry store, providing overwatch while his partners moved toward the trapped civilians. Carlos approached from his blind spot, using a combination of stealth and speed that would have impressed his old instructors. The attacker never saw him coming. Carlos neutralized the first threat using hand-to-hand combat techniques that were designed to be quick, quiet, and absolutely final. He acquired the attacker's rifle and immediately began moving toward the second position, now armed and operating with tactical advantages that the remaining attackers couldn't understand. The second engagement happened near the sporting goods store, where another attacker was advancing on a group of families trapped behind an overturned table. Carlos used military fire and movement tactics, laying down suppressive fire while maneuvering to a better position. The engagement was brief and decisive. By the time police tactical units arrived on scene, Carlos had neutralized all 3 attackers and was coordinating the evacuation of trapped civilians using military-style tactical communication. The arriving SWAT commander found Carlos providing security for the makeshift triage area where wounded shoppers were receiving first aid. "Who's running this operation?" the SWAT commander asked. "Carlos Rivera, mall security," one of the evacuated shoppers replied. "He saved all of us." The SWAT commander looked at Carlos more closely, taking in his tactical positioning, his professional handling of the captured weapons, and his systematic approach to securing the area. You have military training. Carlos nodded. Marine Force Recon, 8 years. Multiple deployments. The commander's expression shifted immediately. Force Recon Marines were legendary in law enforcement and military circles, warriors who operated at the highest levels of tactical competence. Finding one already engaged and controlling the situation was like discovering a Navy SEAL working as a lifeguard. What's the tactical situation? Carlos gave a rapid but comprehensive briefing on the attack pattern, casualty count, and secured areas that was so thorough and professional that the SWAT commander immediately integrated him into the official response operation. The investigation that followed revealed that the 3 attackers had planned their assault for months, targeting Black Friday specifically because of the large crowds and limited police response time. They had expected to encounter minimal resistance from unarmed security guards and had planned for a prolonged attack that would maximize casualties. What they hadn't planned for was encountering a Marine Force Recon operator who treated their assault like any other mission requiring the protection of civilians through the neutralization of hostile forces. The final casualty count was remarkably low considering the scope of the attack. 4 civilians with minor injuries, mostly sustained during the initial panic. Without Carlos's immediate tactical response, investigators estimated that casualties could have numbered in the dozens or hundreds. The media coverage of the Westfield Mall attack focused on the heroic actions of the security guard who had single-handedly stopped 3 armed attackers. But Carlos avoided interviews and publicity. He returned to work the following week, but his anonymous heroism had been captured on security cameras and witnessed by hundreds of shoppers. Carlos's employer promoted him to head of security operations, and law enforcement agencies began consulting with him on mall security protocols and active threat response planning. Other malls started recruiting former military personnel for their security teams, recognizing that some threats required more than traditional security training. The families whose lives were saved that Black Friday never forgot that their miracle had come not from police officers racing to the scene, but from a quiet security guard who had carried 8 years of combat experience into the most important firefight of his civilian life. Carlos Rivera never sought recognition for his actions that day. The skills that saved dozens of lives had been earned in conflicts that most people preferred not to think about, and Carlos understood that heroism often came with experiences that weren't suitable for news interviews. But when evil threatened the innocent, some skills were too valuable to leave unused, and some callings too important to abandon completely. The Westfield Mall reopened 3 days later with enhanced security measures and a memorial plaque honoring the victims of the attack. But for the hundreds of families who still shop there safely, the real security comes from knowing that their protector wasn't just following a security manual. He was a warrior who had promised to defend the defenseless, whether on foreign battlefields or in American shopping malls. So I ask you, have you ever witnessed someone rise to meet a crisis with skills that seem to come from another world entirely? Someone whose calm competence under fire revealed a background that explained their fearlessness. Share their story in the comments, because here at the Human Stories, we believe that the most powerful protections often come from the most unexpected guardians. Thank you for watching. If Carlos's story moved you, please subscribe and share this video. Help us honor those who carry their warrior skills quietly, ready to deploy them when evil threatens the innocent, proving that heroes don't retire from protecting others. They just find new battlefields where their skills are needed. Until next time, remember, the person checking your receipt might once have been the one checking for threats in places where a moment's inattention meant death. Sometimes the most powerful weapons are carried by those who hope never to use them again.